7 News at noon.
Off the top this noon, recovery crews back on the Potomac River this hour as officials investigate what caused a midair collision between an American Airlines passenger jet and a military helicopter. Good afternoon. More than 40 bodies have been pulled from the river.
And we're learning more about the victims killed in the crash. We have team coverage this afternoon. We begin with 7's Nicole Ensalada live in Washington, D.C. to start us off with the latest on the investigation. Nicole.
And Lorena, you know, we are now about a day and a half on our second full day of rescue crews, recovery crews now, and investigators, you know, starting to gather all their information. In fact, let's go ahead and show you that live picture from very close to where we are here on the Potomac River. It is the weather here is just really awful today. So, but we do know from what we are hearing is that the divers and the recovery crews will continue their work. At the same time, though, they are starting to glean bits and pieces of information, trying to get a full picture. At the same time, there are also reports that the FAA has closed down what are called the helicopter corridors here at the very busy Reagan National Airport while they look into exactly what caused this crash. And we should also mention, we're about to show you some video that some might find very disturbing. It's difficult to watch the Black Hawk helicopter coming in from the left as the American Airlines jet on the right is inbound to Reagan National Airport. You can see the two aircraft plummet into the Potomac. Another video shows a similar angle. Air traffic control recordings show the tower did ask the helicopter pilots if they spotted the jet, referred to as the CRJ. Listen.
CRJ in flight. Have fun, CRJ. This club has an aircraft in flight separation.
After 12 seconds of silence,
472 Washington Star, 1 star, 32017.
the president posting Friday morning the Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high by a lot. It was far above the 200-foot limit. That's not really too complicated to understand, is it? It's something investigators are sure to examine now that crews have recovered the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder from the American Airlines jet. The so-called black boxes are actually orange and record information such as speed, altitude, and operations of the aircraft. And in the case of the cockpit recorder, conversations among the pilots.
The most important thing out of all of this investigation is we learn what happened and then make recommendations so that it doesn't happen again.
All of this as recovery crews face a rainy, choppy day on the water, with several bodies still trapped under the surface. And you can see that they are continuing their work, and whether or not they will be able to bring in any sort of cranes, which was what was discussed for today, I'm sure we'll be hearing very soon, because let's go to our next live picture there. DC officials getting ready also to update us on what perhaps they may have, if there have been any new discoveries of bodies today. We know that they were using sonar last night, trying to see if that would help them in this investigation and finding the victims who are still under the water. Coming back out here live, though, you can get a picture here of the Potomac and just what these divers and these investigators are having to deal with. The Potomac is not terribly deep, but it is very muddy, and it is making for difficult work for many of these divers. So again, they found, at least at last report, around 40 bodies. That would leave another 17 or so, or 27 or so that they still need to, 27 that they still need to recover. And what's been happening in the last hours in terms of numbers, we don't know just yet. We should also mention, in terms of this investigation, they're also looking into the fact that apparently there was another sort of a near miss 24 hours before this accident. A regional jet had to turn around, do a go-around because of a jet in its way as it was trying to land as well. So a lot of moving parts, a lot for investigators to get their arms around, and at the same time try to find the bodies of those so far unaccounted for. Reporting live along the Potomac in Washington, D.C., Nicole Ensalada, 7 News.
All right, Nicole, we're also learning more about the victims this noon. Among those on board, members of a prestigious Boston area skate club and their families. 7's Olivia DeVenti live in the Satellite Center to continue our team coverage. Olivia?
Ethan, the lives of several young athletes and some of the members of their families were taken, along with fathers, husbands, and sisters. A growing memorial at an ice rink in Northern Virginia as a figure skating community mourns the death of several of their loved ones, including 12-year-old Brielle Beyer and her mother, Justina.
My favorite memory with Brielle is playing games with her and talking, and I love all these people, and they really support me.
She's way off. You can talk about it. You can hear it. But one of the things that she just told me, she just remembered, last night she was sitting on the couch with her iPad, playing some video game live over the air with her friend on the plane just before the accident occurred.
2 teenage skaters from the Boston area also losing their lives. 13-year-old Jahan and 16-year-old Spencer Lane.
It seemed like the flight had landed, but their phones weren't on and they weren't like popping up anywhere. It just said small plane in the Potomac, and I was just like, oh my God, and my heart just started like exploding out of my chest.
1994 Paris world champions Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Nomov, coaches at the skating club of Boston, also aboard the doomed flight. Grace Maxwell was a passenger on the airliner. She was a student at Cedarville University in Ohio, her school identifying her as one of the victims. Also dead, the crew chief of the Black Hawk helicopter that collided with the American Airlines plane. Ryan O'Hara leaves behind a wife and 1-year-old son. Also on that Black Hawk, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Eves. A flight attendant on the American flight, Ian Epstein, was a father and stepfather.
Ian was just a ball of vibrant, like colorful energy.
Wendy Schaefer was a mother of 2 young children, ages 1 and 3. Kai Dugans, a civil rights attorney and Harvard Law School graduate, was set to start a teaching job next fall at Howard University School of Law. Sarah Lee Best and Elizabeth Ann Keyes, who were associates of the law, also dying.
It's shocking to know that you actually knew and had a relationship with someone who is one of the victims and their family.
And we do know that more of the victims are expected to be identified throughout the day today. In the Satellite Center, Olivia DeVenti, 7 News.
All right, Olivia. 7's Tavares Jones continues our team coverage now with what we're learning about the pilots on board that American Airlines flight. Tavares.
Yeah, Lorena, we're now learning at least one of those commercial pilots on that AA flight had a task of landing the plane Wednesday night, both of them, and one of them had ties to Florida.
These were experienced pilots. I know that the captain had 6 years with PSA, or almost 6 years with PSA, and the first officer almost 2 years.
As we learn more about those who tragically lost their lives in the midair collision over the Potomac River Wednesday night, there were 2 American Airlines pilots who were insured with safely transporting the 60 passengers and 2 of their fellow crew members. One of those is 34-year-old Captain Jonathan Campos, a native of New York and a 2015 graduate of Daytona Beach's Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. He also trained at the Epic Flight Academy of New Smyrna Beach. At his side in the cockpit that night was American Airlines First Officer Samuel Lilly. The 28-year-old's grieving father reliving the heartbreaking moment that he discovered his son was on that ill-fated flight, learning of the tragedy by watching the evening news.
I really didn't think there was any way it was my son, but I started to do the research, and I realized that was his schedule to be on that flight.
His son had been piloting planes since 2019.
My dad helped him go to flight school, and then he worked really hard on that. It was a lot tougher than he thought it was going to be, but he pursued and kicked butt through it, and then he loved what he did.
I just didn't even put 2 and 2 together at all until this morning. I got in my car and had just come from a workout class and was just scrolling through social media for a minute and saw posts about it and just thought there's no way. I thought maybe this person got hacked and that's why they're saying this. But did some more digging and realized that it was him.
His father, a former helicopter pilot in the Army for more than 20 years. He says he knows the ins and outs of Black Hawks flying around D.C.'s Reagan Airport and out of the Pentagon.
I can tell you, if you're flying on that route along the Potomac, if you're wearing night vision goggles, it's going to be very hard to see that airplane. If you're not wearing the goggles, it's going to be easier.
And when it comes to who he believes is at fault,
I think that the Army pilot made a grave error, which really hurts me because that is my brother's. And now my son is dead.
Well, as the recovery efforts continue today, personal items of the victims found in the Potomac River are now being turned over to the FBI. In the Newsplex this noon hour, I'm Tavares Jones, 7 News.
All right, Tavares, make sure to keep it here on 7 News, WSVN.com, the 7 News app, as well as all of our social media platforms for continuing coverage of this disaster in D.C., breaking developments as they happen.